Welcome to my newest presentation. The topic today, subtle ways to motivate students. And as always, I hope that the information helps you in some way. Once again, a disclaimer that you can read freely while I smile and count to 10 in my head. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. So, how do you motivate students? I'd like for you to think about that and maybe even take some notes on something you might hear that could help you in the future, or write notes about what you think will improve students. Anecdotes do help. This isn't academic research we're doing here. This is how to help motivate students. You don't have to approve it through some journal. You just have to approve it through your students and make sure, hey, what I'm doing working to help them? So in this context, anecdotes help. And that's why today I'm going to mostly just talk about some anecdotes that have been effective in me motivating students. And they were also, some of them were inspired by other teachers telling me their stories. And I used what they said in the classroom and it worked. And actually, I'd say 90% of these came from other people telling me what they did. And I tried it and it worked to motivate students. So someone passed these things on to me, and I'm going to pass them on to you through my anecdotes. So first of all, it's good to reflect on what has worked for you and others, as well as what hasn't worked in the past. So while you're taking notes of what does work, why don't you take notes of what doesn't work, so that you know for the future what also doesn't work. And it's also, hey, maybe you're thinking this is going to work in this situation, but not in another situation. And that's dead on. Yeah, what doesn't work sometimes does work, and vice versa. All right. First of all, something I know works is relating to students. I've never seen this not work, at least in Japan. I know that in America, if you like the same thing, sometimes that can have a reverse effect where people think you're faking it. But in Japan, when you like something like Snoopy and you show them, oh, look at this, I have a calendar with the Peanuts and Friends. Yeah, and I bring my file to the class. Students can see my file. And I have a pencil, if I can find it. No, I don't see it, but yeah, I have a pencil, and I showed you in another presentation my Snoopy pen. I have that in here. So usually I use one of these pocket protectors, like an old school nerd, and it helps prevent getting ink in my pocket. And I try to wear shirts that have pockets so that I could slip it in here, or I'll slip it into my pocket. And I make sure that the pens are hanging out of my pocket slightly so that students can see them. And when they're young enough, they might even pull the pens out and play with them. You know what? That's fine. The students are interacting with you. And if they do it and you have pens, it's a great way to interact, and they're also your little writing devices. So yeah, and you can relate to them. And on the bottom of that is a game that I used to play, showing students I like games too. That's gonna get them to open up to you more because they know that you like what they like. It's not always so simple though. A lot of times you're gonna run into students who are going to be asleep in your classroom. And no matter what you do, you can stand there at the front of the room holding a pot of gold and saying, if you're the perfect student, you get this pot of gold at the end of class. You're still going to have students who sleep no matter what. And even the best student has the worst day. And sometimes they're just not in a good mood and they don't want to do anything. And that's fine. Some of those students, they're up. They wake up at 7 a.m. or something, 6:30, 7 a.m. And then they go to school, do before school activities. They clean up, and then they have homeroom, then they have classes, and then they have club activities. And then, I also missed that they have to do recess and clean the school in between that. And then after club activities, they go to cram school. Some of them work part-time jobs as they get older, around late junior high school to high school. And basically they're up until about 11 or 12 at night. And then they get about 7 hours of sleep. And a lot of them, you see them eating lunch like they're starving. It's because they are. They have like a piece of bread for breakfast And I'm not judging. I'm just saying that's not enough breakfast for a child. At least where I'm from, we'd have like bacon, eggs, bread, milk, juice, coffee. And that's just for one person. Here you get like a piece of bread and coffee, and that's breakfast. And then sometimes not breakfast, they skip it, or natto, and yeah, that's their breakfast. But they don't get both. It's not natto and stuff. Then they have this lunch, a bento, and it's like the best thing all day long because it's bento and it's beautiful, and they think you're going to like it too for that reason. It's the most food they get that whole day. And maybe you go there and you go, man, this is nothing. I could eat 2 of these. They eat 1 of those and then they're so full because that's the biggest meal they have all day. And guess what they have for dinner? Most of them, nothing. They skip dinner because they're so busy. After club activities, they go and they go to cram school, or they go to a second job. Some of them go to McDonald's, and because their parents are working, so they eat at McDonald's something. That's why you have a lot of students who love McDonald's, because they're always open and they don't have to worry about it closing. Or you'll see students at those 24-hour diners, but they get drinks because they don't have a lot of money, and they don't really eat food there, or they'll share with their friends. It's not like I'm watching students. I just know because I've talked to a lot of students about their lives, and I get to know them. But the point is that they're really sleepy. And you get students who just can't stay awake in class. And it's because of all these things I was just talking about. So at my first job, it was at a urban high school where students thought of English as an elective. And some of the students didn't pay attention in class and they talked at the beginning. But I'm not going to tell you about that. I'm going to save that story for the end. I want to talk about the first junior high school I worked at, which was where most of the students liked English, except in the 3rd grade, there was always this one kid who was in the back sleeping. And I didn't know why. He was just always in the back sleeping. And it started to actually upset me. Not because he was sleeping while I was trying to help students learn about an activity I spent hours making. He was sleeping while this girl next to him was excited about the activity and wanting to do it. And she couldn't do it because she needed a partner. And the only partner her homeroom teacher and the English teacher would give her was him. So she had to sit there and do nothing but twiddle her thumbs and look at all of her friends doing the activity while this kid was sleeping. And I'm like, that's so not fair for her. I want her to have fun too. And I even pleaded with the Japanese English teacher, let her sit somewhere else, let her work with 2 other kids. And he's like, no, that's her partner. And I go, her partner's just sleeping. And this kind of became an argument, unfortunately. But that was my 3rd school I worked at. I wasn't as keen to how to talk to Japanese English teachers yet. But anyway, it didn't really get worked out with helping her in such a way until I talked to him, the sleeper. So what I did was I walked over to him and I asked him a question he knew because he was a 3rd-year junior high school student. I said, what do you want to be? That's something they learn in the 3rd-year junior high school. They also practice it now in the 6th grade when they're in elementary. And he said to me, I want to be an engineer. He said, I want to be an engineer. And I said, okay. I was happy that he knew a little English, and you could make that sentence considering every time I saw this kid, he was asleep. And I said, hey, how about a convenience store clerk? Those are pretty good jobs too, right? And he goes, I don't want to be a conveni. And I said, well, engineers work really hard, don't they? I had that implied kind of dialogue with him that he would have heard from someone he would understand in Japanese, because that's how they talk. They're not going to say, if you sleep and you don't work hard, you're not going to be an engineer because engineers work hard. I have to say, don't they? In Japanese, they say mashoka, something like that, don't they? And And then he's like, yeah, they work hard. You're right. And then he sat up and I said, your partner's waiting for you. And then he looked at the paper that was the activity and they started doing it. And then every time I had a class with him, he was doing it. He wasn't sleeping. I found out that actually he was a convenience store clerk. That's what he was doing after school, was going to his part-time job as a convenience store clerk. So I really hit it on the head right there. And by the end of the year, he walked over to me and said, thank you. And I was kind of surprised because I thought I was being pretty tough on him. And I've even told the story years later to people, and they've looked at me like, you were the biggest jerk ever for talking to that kid that way. And that Japanese teacher who I didn't get along with, he said to me, you said that to him? But that kid walked over to me and wanted to shake my hand. And he was like, thank you. He said in every class, his grades got better. He understood what I was telling him. And he was so happy that I gave him that extra motivation by being real with him. A lot of people in his life probably just told him, it's okay, sleep. And they're not going to tell him that if you sleep, you'll get zeros. You won't pass tests. They won't tell him that. They'll just tell him, it's okay. You don't have to do anything in life. And then you won't be anything in life. They're never going to say that. And I'm not saying that being a convenience store clerk is nothing. I'm just saying that they get paid a certain amount of money that doesn't help someone who wants a life that provides for a family. It's a part-time job for young people to work and get a little extra money. It's not designed to help someone pay for like a family or things that you want, like an expensive car. You can't work in a convenience store unless you're like a manager and buy a Ferrari, right? And that's just my point. I'm not saying it's a bad job. I'm saying that it's a job for someone who is wanting to do something else later in life and keep improving. But an engineer in certain situations might be a job that could get you a lot of money. It just depends on the engineer job. But I wanted him to reach further, and I was just showing him that if he tries, he can reach that. And he was so happy with the results. I don't know if he's an engineer now. He could be. I really hope so. But what I do know is that when I worked with that kid and I was honest, he reached for his goals. And that's why I say that telling the truth is really important, but doing it in a way that will encourage them, not doing it in a way that'll hurt them. Even if it's tough, doing it in a way where you can have faith in them and know that they'll try to better themselves. And I think that lying to them instead by saying, oh, it's okay, you could just sleep, it's just wrong. You shouldn't ignore a problem. And I know that sometimes here the culture dictates that you ignore a problem, but there's a reason that they ask for people from other countries to come here. It's so that we can bring our culture into the classroom, but not in a way where we change things, just in a way where we inspire. And you can do that in this subtle way. So if a kid's sleeping, just tell them the truth. I've seen instead JTs lecture them in the other way I pointed out, where they're like, if you do this, they're just very direct instead of implicit, and they try to scare them, and it doesn't work. But if you're just real and honest with them, it might work. There's other ways to motivate, though. At a junior high school I worked at, I mentioned in Owita in another presentation, that school was pretty unique for me because it was the first year where I started improving as an ALT, I think. I actually cared about all the students in a way where I was involved. I mean, I cared before, but in this way I knew how to show it. And I went with the new sixth-year class, each new sixth-year class, to a different part of their tour around the school. And I introduced myself to all of them before the first day of class. So by the introduction day of class, all of the sixth-year students knew my name. They all knew something about me. So when I had this projector and quiz for the students showing my introduction lesson, all of them knew at least one answer, and they all were talking, every single one of them, because at the beginning of the school year, I went on the little tour of the school with them and just talked to them. And at that point, the teachers didn't mind. And that's where I got the idea where, oh, I could join them in class too, but that really backfired. But sometimes it's okay to join students for things. If they have a seminar where they're all meeting in the auditorium, it's okay to go to those. if there any event they're having, you can go, and they're going to really appreciate that you're there and trying to learn Japanese or just seeing what they're doing. Yeah, anytime you could join them for an event, it's a great way to motivate them. I joined a judo club and I became the assistant judo club coach. The judo teacher said to me, "Are you a black belt?" Because I told him I did martial arts, and I go, "Well, I did karate for what is it? I did karate for 2 years. It was karate do, and then I did taekwondo for 2 years. Yeah, no black belt, no black belt. And then I did, I'm trying to remember now. It's been so long. I was really young for those. And then I did, I think third was Wing Chun. I did Wing Chun for a year and a half. Yeah, no black belt again. There's no black belt in that. And after that, there was something else. There's something else I'm forgetting. But Tai Chi was somewhere in there. I did it for about 10 years, but I did it on my own. So there was no teacher handing out belts. Never really cared about belts. I didn't like them. I didn't tell him that. Oh, I know. The fifth one was when I came to Japan in Oita. I was doing karate again, Kyokushin. And the teacher I had in Kitakyushu told me, I won't let you join my school unless you take a belt test. So I had to take a belt test and I got like a yellow belt. But I really always hated belts. The point to this long story is I was never motivated to get a belt. I thought belts are stupid. And finally, a sensei made me get a belt. And I told this judo club coach I was never motivated to get a belt. And he said, he handed me a judo black belt. And he said, "You are an honorary black belt now, because you have had so much experience with martial arts that in my mind, you're a black belt." We were speaking in Japanese. So because there's a lot of dialogue and you only knew Japanese, but just to summarize, I wasn't motivated until I held that belt and I saw how the other students looked at me when they saw me walk out in a gi and wearing the black belt, and they looked at me like I was their sensei in judo, and they were so motivated to speak English with me after that. Even one kid, he said he never spoke English before until he met me. He walked over to me and he said, I said to him, "What's your name?" And he said, "No English." And I said, "Hello, no English. It's nice to meet you." All of his friends laughed at him. And then he said, "No, no, no," in English. "No, no, no. My name is Ryusuke." And he told me his last name. And I said, "Nice to meet you." And from then on, he was speaking to me in English every time we spoke. If he made a mistake, I didn't correct him. I just talked to him. And I think that was the best way, is to not correct him and let him just try. And he tried. And so I got this kid who never spoke English to speak English by just throwing on a black belt. And I never really cared about belts until then. I'd go to the judo club and be an assistant coach. I showed up to one of their official judo events in Kyushu, and it was really cool. The girl in their judo club ended up with a gold medal. It was freaking awesome to see that. And yeah, she was actually like the best in Kyushu. So I was so proud of those kids. And being a part of that also made me feel like I was more a part of the school. And yeah, I drank with the teachers and they didn't speak English. So those are pretty good experiences just by motivating and being there. Unfortunately, if you work at a college, you can't go to a club activity. I learned this from a friend of mine who's a professor. Yeah, that's taboo to go to a club activity. But for those of us who work in elementary, junior high school, and high school, you can go to club activities. And you don't have to officially join them like I did with the judo club. You can just kind of go there and watch, and they'll really appreciate it. Okay, to the last part. Not to self-promote, but I mentioned I was a writer. My first story that I wrote in Japan was about an experience I had while motivating students called Zoinks. I kind of started to get into that at the beginning, where I talked about the first school I was teaching at, where it was an urban high school. And that's what this story is about. I had met some basketball students who didn't want to speak English, like all of the basketball team. And this is about how I approached that to motivate them. It involves me playing basketball in socks. And if you're interested in the story, there is a link for you. It's with Peacock Journal. And you can take a picture of that link and then write it up, because you can't click it. Yeah. So that about does it. I hope you came up with some good ways to motivate through listening. And may the words you heard be remembered as a positive guidance for your future.